I still remember the day it all began, though sometimes I wish I could forget. Her name was Lily. For years, she had been the center of my world. I thought our love was something unshakable, something built to last. But the truth has a cruel way of revealing itself, and when it did, it tore everything apart. It was late autumn when I first sensed the distance between us. Lily started coming home later than usual, her explanations vague, her smile forced. I ignored it at first, convincing myself that she was tired, stressed, maybe even overwhelmed with work. Love, after all, is blind when it wants to be. But lies have a smell, a shadow, a rhythm, and I began to notice them in every word she spoke. One night, she didn't come home at all. She texted me at midnight, "I'm staying at Sarah's tonight. Don't wait up." My gut twisted. Sarah lived across town, and I knew Lily hadn't mentioned visiting her in months. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hands trembled around the phone as if the truth was already pressing against my chest, suffocating me. The next morning, she walked through the door with her hair a little messy and her perfume strangely unfamiliar. I looked at her and knew. I didn't need proof. Not really. The proof was in her eyes, avoiding mine, filled with guilt she didn't dare to admit. That was the day something inside me broke. And yet, I didn't leave. Not immediately. Part of me still hoped that maybe I was wrong, that maybe love could be repaired, glued back together if I held on tightly enough. But hope is dangerous. It makes you cling to what's already burning. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the truth came crashing down. A friend of mine, someone who didn't even know the weight of what he was carrying, mentioned seeing Lily at a restaurant. Not alone. With another man. They were laughing, touching hands across the table, the kind of closeness that couldn't be mistaken. When he told me, I didn't even react. I just nodded, thanked him, and walked away. Inside, however, it felt as if my ribs had cracked open, leaving nothing but emptiness. That night, I confronted her. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. Instead, she sat there on the couch, silent, tears slipping down her face, and finally whispered, "I'm sorry." Sorry, a word too small to hold the wreckage of what she had done. I left that night. I didn't pack much, just a bag, some clothes, my old camera, and my notebooks. I couldn't stay in that apartment where her laughter still lingered in the walls, where every corner reminded me of a life that had shattered. I moved into a small, quiet flat on the other side of the city. It was empty, almost painfully so, but at least it was mine. The nights were the hardest. Silence pressed against me like a weight, and sometimes I swore I could still hear Lily's voice echoing in my head. That was when I met Emma. The city had always been loud, restless, and unforgiving, but that night it felt strangely muted. I wandered through dimly lit streets, my thoughts heavy, my chest tight. The betrayal I had discovered hours earlier was still raw, cutting deeper each time I replayed it in my head. That was when I saw her. Emma. She was sitting alone on a bench under a flickering streetlight, her hair catching the dull glow, her gaze lost in the pavement beneath her feet. There was something fragile about her posture, something that mirrored the storm inside me. For a moment, I just stood there, watching her, unsure why I felt pulled toward her presence. It was as if fate had decided to place her in my path that very night, when I needed it the most. I approached slowly. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She looked up, startled at first, then softened. Her eyes carried the kind of sadness I recognized instantly, the kind that comes from loving someone too much, only to be left shattered. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I don't want to be alone right now." Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the desperation in her tone, or maybe it was the reflection of my own loneliness in her eyes. Whatever it was, I sat down beside her. We didn't speak much. The silence between us wasn't heavy, though. It was comforting. like we were both quietly holding onto each other's broken pieces without saying a word. When I finally walked her home, the streets were almost empty. She thanked me softly before stepping inside her building, and I lingered there for a while, staring at the closed door. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest trace of warmth returning to my chest. I woke up earlier than usual that morning, the kind of restless awakening when your body feels the weight of unanswered questions. Lily's words from the night before echoed in my head, *I never stopped loving you. That confession had torn open every wound I thought had scarred over. I tried to distract myself with work, but my thoughts kept circling back to her eyes, her trembling voice, the way she had looked at me with both regret and longing. I hated that part of me still wanted to believe her. Later that afternoon, I met Mark, my closest friend. He had been there through the worst of my breakup with Lily, watching me crumble and then slowly build myself back up. Sitting across from him at the small cafe, I could see suspicion in his gaze. "You saw her again, didn't you?" he asked without hesitation. I nodded. "She found me, said she wants to explain." Mark leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Man, don't let her drag you back. I saw what she did to you. Remember? You were broken, and now she suddenly shows up with some story? Don't be fooled." His words carried weight, but so did the memory of Lily's tears. I remember the way she had looked away when I demanded the truth years ago, the silence that had shattered us. I had told myself she was guilty of betrayal, yet the part of me that still loved her kept whispering, what if there's more to it, That evening, I found myself walking along the riverbank where Lily and I had once spent countless nights talking about our future. The water shimmered with the last glow of sunset, and I couldn't escape the flood of memories. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw her, Lily. She looked fragile, her hands wrapped tightly around her coat as though holding herself together. "I was hoping you'd be here," she said softly. I stayed silent, my chest tightening. She took a step closer. "Back then, I didn't betray you the way you think. Yes, I hurt you, but I need you to know the truth. It was never about not loving you." I clenched my fists. Then what was it about? Lily? Because from where I stood, it looked like betrayal. Her eyes glistened. It was a mistake, a stupid, painful mistake, and I've lived every day regretting it. The river carried the sound of her words into the quiet night. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to erase everything. Yet, somehow, I couldn't. The weeks that followed were heavy, like walking with stones in my chest. I had told myself 1,000 times that I would never forgive Lily. That betrayal of that kind couldn't simply be erased by apologies or tears. And yet, her face haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, sometimes the Lily I had fallen in love with, smiling on that summer night under the fairy lights, and sometimes the Lily broken by guilt, standing in front of me with trembling hands, begging me not to walk away. I tried to drown myself in work, meetings, late nights at the office, endless coffee, and sleepless mornings, but everything I did was laced with her absence. The silence of my apartment grew louder, and even the city's chaos couldn't mute the memory of her laugh. One night, unable to stand the four walls anymore, I went out walking. It was raining, a steady drizzle that made the pavement glow under the streetlights. I shoved my hands deep into my coat pockets and kept moving, directionless, and then I saw her. She was sitting on a bench, soaked, her hair sticking to her face, staring at the ground as if the world had already swallowed her whole. My steps froze. A part of me screamed to keep walking, to not let her drag me back into the storm she had created. But another part, the part of me that had loved her so deeply, refused to move. She looked up. Our eyes met through the curtain of rain, and for a second, the entire city went quiet. No horns, no footsteps, no rain, Just the two of us, suspended in something I couldn't name. "James," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the downpour. "I know you don't owe me anything. I know I destroyed the only thing that mattered. But I can't stop loving you. I can't breathe without you." I stood there, soaked, my heart pounding in ways I thought it had forgotten. I wanted to scream at her, to ask why she had thrown it all away, why she had let me burn while she stood with someone else. But instead, the only words that left my mouth were, "Why are you here?" "Because I'm not ready to give up," she said. "Even if you hate me, even if you never forgive me, I just needed you to know I'm still here, always." The rain fell harder, blurring her figure, and I didn't know if it was the storm outside or the storm inside me that made my body shake. I hated her, I loved her, and in that moment, both feelings coexisted, tearing me apart. I didn't answer, I just walked past her, my shoulder brushing hers as I went. Her eyes followed me, but I couldn't look back. If I did, I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to keep moving. The rain didn't stop for days. It was as if the sky itself reflected the chaos inside me. I kept replaying that night on the bench in my head, Lily's soaked figure, her trembling words, the way her eyes begged for mercy even though she didn't deserve it. At the office, people noticed I was distracted. Deadlines slipped, my temper shortened, and when my boss asked me what was wrong, I almost laughed. How could I explain that my entire life felt like it was unraveling because of one person? That love, something invisible and irrational, was strong enough to break me. I thought avoiding Lily would make things easier, but the city had its own plans. I kept running into reminders of her, the cafe where we had our first date, the bookstore where she had dragged me inside because the smell of old paper is better than perfume. Even the park bench where she first kissed me, every corner carried her fingerprints. Then, one evening, she showed up at my door. No warning, no message, just standing there, her hands clenched, her face pale, as if she'd been rehearsing this moment all day. "I can't keep pretending," she said before I could even speak. "You don't want to see me, I know, but James, I need to tell you everything. Not excuses, not apologies, just the truth." I hesitated, my hand still gripping the door, ready to close it, but something in her tone, raw and desperate, held me still. She stepped inside slowly, like she was afraid the floor would collapse under her weight. She didn't sit, she just stood in the middle of the room, dripping rain onto my carpet, her eyes fixed on mine. "The night I betrayed you," she began, her voice shaking. "It wasn't about love. It wasn't because I didn't care about you. It was because I was scared. Scared of how much I needed you, of how much of myself I had given away. I thought, if I ruined it, I'd be free, that I wouldn't have to feel this vulnerable anymore. But the truth is, I chained myself to the worst kind of prison, one without you." Her confession cut through me like glass. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly, but her voice inside me still whispered, "And yet you still chose someone else." "Do you think words can fix this?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "No," she admitted, tears mixing with raindrops on her cheeks, "but maybe they can make you understand. I never stopped loving you, James, not for a second. Even when I made the biggest mistake of my life." The silence between us stretched until it was unbearable. I turned away, staring at the city lights through the window, trying to gather the pieces of myself that she had shattered. She was behind me, waiting, trembling, hoping. And I hated that part of me, the part that wanted to turn around. To take her in my arms and pretend none of it had ever happened was stronger than my pride. I didn't sleep that night. Lily's words echoed in my head long after she left, each one tearing open wounds I thought I had managed to stitch shut. The apartment felt smaller somehow, suffocating. I poured myself a drink, then another, but no amount of whiskey drowned her voice. "I never stopped loving you, James. Morning came too soon, dragging with it the weight of choices I didn't want to make. At work, I stared at my computer screen for hours, doing nothing, my mind replaying her face, her tears, her trembling confession. I wanted to erase her, but erasing her meant erasing years of my own life, years where she was everything. That evening, I found myself walking through the city without direction. My feet carried me to the park, the same park where everything had started. The bench was wet from the rain, but I sat anyway, letting the dampness seep through my clothes. I needed to feel something real, something sharp, to remind myself that I was still alive. And then, as if fate had a cruel sense of humor, Lily appeared again. She froze when she saw me, as though she had been debating whether to come at all. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she walked closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hate me?" I looked up at her. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands stuffed into the pockets of her coat as if she was holding herself together by force. "Hate you?" I repeated slowly. "I wish I could. It would make everything easier. But hate, that would mean you don't matter, and you still matter too much." Her lips trembled, but she didn't look away. Instead, she sat down beside me, the same way she had years ago when we were just two strangers testing the edges of possibility. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. I don't want to disappear from your life completely, even if it's as nothing more than a memory you don't spit on when it crosses your mind." I turned to face her. "And what am I supposed to do with this, Lily? Carry around your regret like it's some kind of gift?" "No," she whispered. "Carry it like it's proof. Proof that you were the only thing real in my life. The only thing I was too weak to hold on to." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she had destroyed me, that no speech could ever glue back the shards she left. But sitting there beside her, with the city lights reflecting off her eyes, I felt the truth clawing at me. I still loved her. And that was the cruelest part of it all. The days that followed blurred together. I told myself to stay away from Lily, to bury her words and move on. But the universe seemed determined to drag her back into my orbit. She started appearing in small ways, passing me on the street, sitting in the corner of the cafe where I sometimes stopped for coffee, lingering near the train station as though she was hoping I'd notice her. Part of me wanted to believe it was coincidence, but the way she looked at me every time said otherwise. I avoided her at first, pretended not to see her, but avoidance was like holding my breath underwater. Eventually, I had to come up for air. One evening, after a long day of pretending to function, I found her waiting outside my apartment building. Her hair was damp from the rain, her coat clinging to her shoulders, and her eyes, the same eyes that had once convinced me the world wasn't such a cruel place, were locked on mine. "James," she said softly, "please, just give me one night to tell you everything. After that, if you want me gone, I'll disappear." I should have told her no. I should have turned around and closed the door behind me, but instead, I stepped aside, letting her in. Inside, the silence pressed heavy between us. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, waiting for her to speak. Finally, she lifted her head. "I didn't betray you because I stopped loving you. I betrayed you because I was afraid." Her words twisted something inside me. "Afraid of what?" "Of you," she admitted, "of how much power you had over me, of the way I couldn't breathe without wondering what you were thinking. If you would still love me tomorrow, I thought if I left first, if I destroyed it myself, I could control the pain. But I was wrong. All I did was destroy the only thing that ever mattered to me." I stared at her, my chest tight. "So that's your excuse? Fear? You broke me because you were scared of how much I loved you?" "Yes," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And I hate myself for it every day. You don't have to forgive me, James, but please, please don't doubt that I loved you." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I had to look away, because as much as I wanted to deny it, as much as I wanted to stay angry, part of me believed her, and that belief was dangerous. It meant the walls I'd spent years building were already starting to crumble. The hours slipped by as Lily spoke, unraveling the tangled mess of her choices. She told me about the sleepless nights after she left, about how every face she saw in the crowd reminded her of mine, about the gnawing guilt that grew louder than any excuse she had built for herself. At first, I listened in silence, my jaw tight, arms folded like armor across my chest, but somewhere between her broken sentences and quiet sobs, my anger began to shift. It didn't vanish, it never could, but it transformed into something else, something heavier. Grief. "You think words can fix this?" I finally asked, my voice low. "Do you think pouring your heart out erases what you did to me?" "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I know it doesn't. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I had to try, because living without you, living with what I did, it's killing me." I turned toward the window, unable to look at her. Outside, the city lights flickered against the rain-smeared glass, each one a tiny reminder of a world that kept spinning no matter how broken we were. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised even me. "I wanted to hate you forever. I wanted that to be easy, but it isn't. You're still here, in every corner of me, and I don't know if that's love, or if it's just the wound you left behind." Lily stood then, trembling, and took a tentative step closer. "Maybe it's both." Her nearness burned like fire and froze like ice all at once. I wanted to push her away, to remind her of every night I'd spent choking on the emptiness she left, but my body betrayed me. I stayed still, frozen between the gravity of her presence and the weight of my own fear. "I can't promise you I won't hurt again," she said, her voice raw, "but I can promise you I'll never run. Not again. If you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that." The room went silent, except for the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the glass. Her words lingered like a question I didn't know how to answer. Because deep down, I wasn't sure what scared me more, letting her back in, or letting her go forever. The night grew heavier, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes every breath feel weighted. Lily hadn't moved from where she stood, just a few feet away, waiting, patient, desperate, trembling. I sat there, torn in two. Part of me wanted to close the distance, to bury my face in her hair and let time reverse, to believe that the love we once had was stronger than the betrayal that shattered it. But another part of me screamed warnings, flashing reminders of sleepless nights, hollow mornings, and the echo of her absence. "You don't get it," I finally said, my voice breaking. "It wasn't just that you left, it was *how star. You didn't say a word. Lily, you vanished, like I meant nothing, and I've been carrying that silence ever since." Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. "I know, and it's the worst thing I've ever done. Every day I replay it, what I should have said, how I should have fought for you instead of running. I was weak, and you deserved better." Her honesty cut deeper than any excuse could. For the first time, I saw not the woman who betrayed me, but the woman who was breaking under the weight of her own choices. I stood, restless, pacing the small room. The walls felt too close, the air too thin. My hands trembled, torn between reaching for her and holding on to my anger like a shield. "You ruined me," I said, my voice raw, "and now you come back, asking me to believe you've changed. How do I trust you again? How do I risk everything I have left?" She took a step closer, her voice fragile but unwavering. "Because I'll risk everything, too. I'll risk the shame, the pain, the chance you'll walk away right now. I'd rather lose trying to make it right than live another day pretending I can without you." The words hung between us, electric, terrifying. I felt the weight of them pressing down on my chest. For a long time, I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at her, the woman who had once been my everything, the woman who had destroyed me, and yet, somehow, still had the power to make me feel alive. My lips parted, but no words came, because the truth was, I didn't know what my answer would be, not yet. The silence stretched, and I knew the choice was coming. The hero stood by the river, the cold wind ruffling his hair. Before him lingered the faces of two women who had shaped his life, Lily, whose betrayal had left deep scars, and Emma, whose quiet presence had begun to heal them. Memories flooded him, the naive love with Lily, the sleepless nights of heartbreak, and the gentle moments with Emma, where trust slowly returned. He thought of Lily's message, "I've changed. Give me a chance." His hand trembled as he held the phone, torn between old pain and new hope. Emma stood silently, her calm gaze steady, understanding everything without words. In her patience and quiet strength, he saw the possibility of a future built on trust, not fleeting passion. His heart pounded. Could he risk the past again, or step into a future with someone who had proven real and kind? He looked at Emma, felt her hand in his, and felt a fragile clarity settle over him. "Let's go together," he whispered. The past lingered behind him, in memories of Lily and broken promises, but it no longer had power. Step by step, he walked forward with Emma, toward an uncertain but hopeful future. The city lights reflected on the river, and for the first time in years, life felt full again. Hope had triumphed over pain, trust had overcome fear, and love, genuine, patient, and steadfast, finally took root in his heart. Subscribe and like so you don't miss the next shocking story. Thank you for watching.